It's a new adventure. Praise be, it is a bright orange suit. Welcome back to the Orange Suit Guy show here on YouTube. And look at that. Look at that. After several months off, people said we couldn't do it. People say, nah, Kyle get lazy. Kyle won't do it. Kyle's got too many shows going on. Orange Suit Guy show's going to take a back seat. Guess what? Beep, beep, we're driving. Orange Suit Guy show is back 2 weeks in a row. This is a special one for me because this is the last show that I'm recording before my 33rd birthday. That's right, the Orange Suit Guy. You're never too old to put on the world's brightest blazer and yap in front of a camera. Never too old to do it. And I'm doing it. Next week on Wednesday, I will turn 33 years old. You will actually see this video on Monday, so it'll be just 48 hours after this video goes live. The only reason you can't see my gray hair is because I have a big cowboy hat on. It takes it all out. But that's besides the point. This is the show that is my life on camera. This is where I just get to sit here and kind of yap with y'all. Just have a good time being a dude. Being a dude from Oklahoma who's an Oklahoma State fan. But we don't talk just Oklahoma State on this show. Again, I have several other shows where I get into Oklahoma State athletics. We will touch on it in this show for sure. But we're also going to spend some time in the things that occupy my interests outside of the world of sports. That is the name of the game here on the Orange Suit Guy show. And last week, I gave the origin story. We pulled the curtain back. We got a lore drop on Orange Suit Guy show to start the show last week, talking about my trip up to Boise, Idaho to see the blue turf of Albertsons Stadium. Pascal, you did a great job getting some of those pictures in there in post. We're going to try to do that again this week. You know, for someone like myself who has a photo album on his phone that's dedicated just to selfies, because I am that vain as a human being, and that folder on my phone, what is that face? That's it. Might zoom in on that later. Is that folder on my phone is over 300 photos in it. I usually have the photos that I'm looking for. What takes the longest is going through that folder to find the photos I'm looking for. But I've got some photos I know from the trip that we're going to talk about today, because it's later in that same football season. The next time that orange football guy, sure, orange suit guy, who goes to football games, traveled as a visiting fan for Oklahoma State athletics, and that was to a town that I'm just going to say in the nicest way that I know how to, was not as much fun as Boise, Idaho. Boise was a blast. The people of Boise State University were absolutely incredible. Had a miraculous time with them. That's not the right adjective, but it's the one I'm going with. All right, it's been a busy week. It's been a long week. I'm tired. This studio's hot under these lights. I can barely make a cohesive thought, but it's never stopped me before. I have a job in the media now. And going to Lubbock, this is my hard segue back to get back on track. Going to Lubbock later in that football season, by the time I got there, we knew in the Big 12, this was in the 2021 season where Oklahoma State went and played for a Big 12 championship. We knew who the good teams were. We knew who the bad teams were. And the matchup between Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, in that matchup, I mean, it was polar opposites. Texas Tech had just fired their head coach. Matt Wells was out of a job after 2+ seasons, maybe 3+ seasons at Texas Tech after he came over from Utah State. There was no excitement around Texas Tech football. Jones AT&T Stadium was 50% full, maybe. But I decided, this is a Big 12 venue. This is one I haven't been to. And it's not a long way out there, but it's in a weird direction now. Not so much, because since then we've added, teams over there. But at the time, it was kind of out by its lonesome in West Texas. There wasn't a whole lot around it. And so I said, you know what? Yeah, let's just get out around there. Let's see what LBK, let's see what Lubbock, Texas has to offer. And with all sincerity to anybody in Lubbock, Texas, to anybody who's associated with Texas Tech University, or especially Texas Tech athletics, I have no desire to go back to Lubbock, Texas, unless I am being very handsomely compensated to do so. It was not a place that I had a good time. I had things thrown at me. I was chased through the parking lot of a Walmart by somebody who was under the influence of something. And I mean, I almost got caught. The dude had some wheels on him. I just had a sizable head start because I forgot my belt in Stillwater for this here suit, and so I had to go to a Walmart and buy a belt the day before the game because those pants are ill-fitting at best, and I did not want there to be a situation inside Jones AT&T Stadium. I will say the stadium itself, nice, and they continued to do a renovation to it in the few years past. They rebuilt the visitor locker room entirely, put some new features in there. So I still feel like I haven't seen the current version of Jones AT&T Stadium, but it was a good time. The Masked Rider is fun. I mean, we have a better version in Stillwater with Bullet. Xerox U has nothing on us. Again, it was not much of an atmosphere. I actually, when I got there, that game was a Saturday night game. I got into town Friday in the afternoon and got to my hotel, which was right off the interstate. It's a really convenient place to get to. And decided I wanted to get something to eat. Before we even get to Lubbock, I'll tell you about the drive out there because there's no real good way from Stillwater to get to Lubbock, Texas. You have pretty much two ways that you can take. One of those ways is to take I-40 all the way to Amarillo, Texas, and then drop straight south on a highway with a number on it that I don't know, and go from Amarillo down to Lubbock. And frankly, that's kind of what I thought I was doing. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think there was another way to get there. I threw Lubbock, Texas into the GPS, hit start on my Google Maps, and I started driving. Took me on I-40 west. We started going west. I thought business as usual. And then we got to Lawton, Oklahoma. And in Lawton, Oklahoma, it had me get off the interstate. Don't have a whole lot of a desire to be in Lawton, Oklahoma. Every time I've been there, I've been trying to leave as quickly as possible. So I said, what are we doing? What are we getting off the interstate here in Lawton, Oklahoma? Maybe there's construction. Maybe there's some road hazard. They're taking me around something and going to get me back on the interstate and keep us going. No. It just had me take little state highways from Lawton, Oklahoma to Lubbock, Texas, down every unheard of highway on the planet. Multiple times I said out loud to myself, I really hope my car doesn't break down because I have no idea where I'm at, and I don't know what I would tell anybody if I did break down. I have no idea. There's nothing around me. None of these roads have names. I don't know where I am. And I don't condone texting and driving, or in this case it was Snapchatting and driving, but I was like this with my hand on the wheel, and I'm recording a video for Snapchat, and I didn't feel like I was impeding anybody's safety because there was nobody else on the road. There was not a soul out there. And that was kind of what I was capturing. I was just like, listen, if something happens, and if this goes south, I don't know where I am. There's nothing here. There's just farmland around me. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I end up crossing the Texas border, and I'm going through these little towns in the state of Texas, in the western part of Texas. And I get to a place that I will remember the name of for the rest of my life, and that is a little town called Paducah, Texas. Shout out anybody from Paducah, Texas. I'm sure you're wonderful people. There's not a lot of you. It's a really small town. And I needed to stop. I needed to get gas. And so I find a gas station there in Paducah, pull off, and decide, you know what, I need to get out. I need to stretch my legs. Maybe I'll go to the bathroom. Maybe I'll go do something. I'll run into this store. Maybe I'll pick me up a bottle of water and a candy bar or something and just keep this thing moving while I'm getting gas. And I go inside, and this is a family-run establishment. And this family, I don't want to assume that they were Indian, but they were from somewhere geographically in the world region of India. Whether they were Indian, whether they were Pakistani, whether they were Sri Lankan, I don't know, but they were from that part of the world geographically. 3 generations of this family all stand up as soon as I walk in the door. They stand up and they start clapping for me. To this day, I don't know why. I don't know. I wasn't dressed in the suit. I didn't look like my alter ego. I was just in driving clothes, just in some comfortable clothes, knowing that I was going several hours down the road. I'm just getting gas at their store. And if it's a sales pitch, it worked because I was coming in there, I was going to buy something anyway. Right? I'm that type that even if I come in just to use the bathroom at your gas station, 99% of the time, I'm going to buy something while I'm there. Even if I'm outside getting gas, I'll buy something while I'm there. It may not be much, maybe a bag of M&Ms, right? Might be a Snickers bar, might be a bottle of water, but I'm going to buy something while I'm there just because I'm in your establishment. So I already knew I was purchasing something, right? And now I feel a pressure. Now I have to buy something. Well, I walk to the cooler, get a bottle of water, or maybe it was a soda, I don't remember. Walk through, grab a candy bar, and then I saw my greatest weakness. I saw the thing that will get me every single time, which is the famous convenience store hot box full of fried goodies. And I said, well, I'm not that hungry. There's no good reason that I need a corn dog or some chicken tenders or some mozzarella sticks. There's no good reason I need those. But there's going to be a bunch of reasons I buy them. And so I walk to the hot case, and I'm looking at the hot case. Gentleman comes over and said, yep, I need a corn dog, I need some mozzarella sticks. That's what I need. That's the decision that we're making today. And so I buy these items. I get back, I've filled my car up with gas. I eat, I continue on the road. I eventually get to Lubbock, get to my hotel, and decide it's dinner time, because I still had a few hours, right, between getting that snack in Paducah and getting to Lubbock and deciding to go get dinner. And I wanted to go over to the stadium, kind of scope it out for parking reasons and things like that too. Strategize what I was going to do day of, because I don't know the area. And I went to a restaurant that I would love to look the name up of. I don't remember it. It was a soccer themed pub style restaurant. And in my opinion, probably the best place in Lubbock, Texas. I had a very good meal while I was there, and Lubbock was off to a good start. I said, yeah, it doesn't seem overly difficult to navigate around. My hotel's right off the interstate. The stadium, I can see it. It's right over there. Again, right off the interstate. Everything seems to be as it should be. Go home, go to bed, wake up. Everything's fine. I have a friend at the time who was an Oklahoma State graduate who lived back in Lubbock. And like I said, at the time, this guy and I were friends, and I got in contact with him, and he had a ticket to the game, so we were going to go hang out, go to the game together, and have food before the game, just kind of reconnect and spend some time together. Well, I'm hanging out at an establishment, a eating and drinking establishment, most of the day in Lubbock before he gets a hold of me. And he says, in Stillwater we have Eskimo Joe's, but in Lubbock you have to go try this place called Spanky's. I hadn't heard of Spanky's, but he said, you have to go over there. It's not great food, but it's the spot you go to in Lubbock. Fair enough, let's go. By this point, I'm suited up. I'm ready to go, because I know we're going straight from there to the stadium, and actually my buddy's mom was gracious enough to just take us over there and drop us off so we didn't have to worry about parking the car. So that was even better. And we get there, and it looks packed. But it's a game day, and we're just down the road from the stadium, so I'm not surprised. We walk in, and everybody in there is wearing orange. Oklahoma State has taken over Spanky's. It was a great time. Got to just sit there and hang out with a ton of Oklahoma State fans, talk with a bunch of cowboys and cowgirls, eat some good, diner food, basically. Good stuff. Again, good experience with Spanky's. We get to the stadium. We see the really dumb tortilla throwing tradition. I get some batteries thrown at me, which happens. I have a student from Texas Tech, run at me in the parking lot to start chirping me. And again, I said last week, I like some good-natured banter. But this guy puts one finger, and it is this finger, it's not the other one, in my face and starts yelling boomer at me. He's wearing a Texas Tech polo. He's a Texas Tech student. And he starts yelling boomer at me and calling me, OU's little brother. And I'm confused. Because this man doesn't go to Oklahoma. This man goes to Texas Tech. I know your team's bad, but, Oklahoma State went 1-11 last year. And had I been a fan in the orange suit going to games, and I would have had visiting fans chirping at me, we can have some back and forth, and that's fine. And even if I believe it or not, I can tell you that I think Oklahoma State's going to beat you. But I looked at him, and I'm not going to say I lost my cool, because I didn't. I was just confused. And I said, we can be OU's little brother. I don't think we are, but we can be OU's little brother. You're worse statistically this year than UTSA. Texas State has a better program than you. Who are you better than in the state of Texas right now? Probably Rice. And that's about it. Like, you got nothing going on. I can be OU's little brother. You got to worry about getting better than random city schools in the state of Texas. He walked away from me. I didn't see him for the rest of the night. It's the wrong way to do banter. You know, come at me and let's have some fun, but don't come at me rooting for a completely different school that has nothing to do with this matchup. No, don't do that. But I digress. The rest of the time in Lubbock was not great. Again, stuff getting thrown at me, stuff getting yelled at me, and not in the fun banter type of way. I went home and I got crazy sick. I thought I had COVID. This is 2021. Thought I had COVID. Texted my buddy. Said, "Hey, are you sick? Like, did you get sick?" And he said, "No." He said, "You got sick because you got West Texas." I said, "What in the world are you talking about?" He said, "Now that happens. If you've never been to West Texas before, you come out here and you spend a couple days out here in the dust, and then you go home, you're going to get sicker than you've ever been." And I was, for about 2 or 3 days, the sickest I've ever been. And, yeah, I don't recommend that. But, you know, it was a good time. I've got some photos of that you've probably seen by now, because future Kyle, who's editing this, is probably sick of listening to me talk. And I love these trips. I don't know that I would want to go back to Lubbock now. And it's not because Texas Tech is good. It's because Texas Tech has new money syndrome. And now they just think the world of themselves. And it's just insufferable. But the game itself was not a great game. It was a 21-0 win for Oklahoma State. And we were not a great offensive team that year. But Texas Tech couldn't move the ball. Donovan Smith ended up starting at quarterback for Texas Tech. I think he finished his career at Houston. He played in a couple different places throughout his collegiate career, and it was brutal. It was a brutal game to watch. Could have been a lot worse than 21-0, but it was a mercy killing, if I can say that. And so, there's story number 2, road trip number 2 for Orange Suit Guy. There's plenty more of these stories, and the longer that this show goes on, there will be more. And I love making these stories. I love having these adventures. It's a good time for me. It's a good time for football fans. This is part of the pageantry of college athletics, and it's what I love. So we're going to go into our second segment of the show now. We're going to go into the Orange Archive, pull a really, really fun one out, because we're coming up on football season. I know we just talked a lot of football with that trip to Lubbock, but we're going to stay in Stillwater for the Orange Archive this week. We're going to keep it on the turf at Boone Pickens Stadium, although the hint that I'll give you is it was not yet called Boone Pickens Stadium when we're going to talk about this game that was still a couple years away. So stick around. We'll come right back to pull from the Orange Archive right next. Right next. Yes. Next up on the Orange Suit Guy Show. Pulling from the Orange Archive, Big 12 Media Day was this week. I just got back. Part of the reason that I'm tired and kind of all over the place tonight and a little bit slappy, a little bit punchy, a little bit all over the place is we just got back from Frisco, Texas, doing Big 12 Media Days. It's 2 really, really long days of media coverage. Blast of a time. Great time. I will talk highly of it forever. But it makes you tired. It makes you tired. It makes you really happy that you get to rest when you come back, except that I don't, because I don't believe in resting. I just jump back into filming shows and making content for you guys. And because Big 12 Media Days was this week, it means that I've got football on the brain. It means that I am ready for football season. Football season is really close, right around the corner. We call Football Media Days the unofficial start of the college football season. And so we're going to preview Oklahoma State football for 2026 by going back in time. The last 2 seasons, again, have not been fun for Oklahoma State fans, myself included. So we're going to go back to a much more fun time because I like nostalgia. And I like nostalgia even better when that nostalgia comes at the expense of the team that I can't stand. I love it even more when that nostalgia comes at the expense of the University of Oklahoma. And if you remember all the way back in episode 1 of this show, and if you don't, that's fine, because that's a long time ago now, I talked about the 16-13 Bedlam win down in Norman in 2001. Thought, what better way to introduce this segment than one of the biggest wins in the history of the Oklahoma State football program? And I stand by that it was. But we're finally now getting to what happened the following season when we got back to Stillwater, when we got back to what was then still called Lewis Field. Spoiler alert, Oklahoma State won that game. Back-to-back wins over the University of Oklahoma in 2001 and 2002 for head coach Les Miles. It's coming after Bob Simmons had beaten them 2 out of 3 times in the late 90s. He lost, I believe, his last 2 in 5 years as a coach here. But this proved that, okay, you go down and you beat Oklahoma on the road in 2001. Anybody can beat anybody once and kind of be a fluky little victory. This showed that those don't have to be a fluke, that you can walk on the field against somebody and say, I don't care. I don't care what their ranking is. I don't care the history of the program. I don't care if this is a rivalry game. We can win this game. And I think that's how Les Miles viewed Oklahoma, and I think that's how he viewed Bedlam. Oklahoma was another team that had come in that year ranked in the top 5. Another heavy contender to go play for a national championship. Les Miles said, I don't care. He's going to come in. They're going to come into our building. Oklahoma's coming into our building. We beat them last year in their building, and they might have been better. What's saying we can't beat them again? And beat them we did. Les told everybody kind of in after the fact that he pulled his foot off the gas a little bit. It was a 10-point win at the end of the day, 38-28, but it could have been a lot worse than that for Oklahoma, because at one point Oklahoma State was up 35-3. In the third quarter, Oklahoma State was up 35-3 and kind of called off the dogs and said, let's get out of here with a win. Oklahoma makes a little bit of a comeback, but too little too late. Oklahoma State holds on, 38-28 victory over the Oklahoma Sooners in that 2002 season. And that was the magical season. That season sparked the birth in the Houston Bowl down in 2002. Couldn't think of the name of it for a second, and I was there. I was at that game. We've talked about that game on this show as well, the win over Southern Miss to finish a 7-6 season. First time we'd been back to a bowl game in several years, and started kind of the trajectory of Oklahoma State becoming a good and ultimately really, really good national football program again. And again, it proved that beating Oklahoma didn't have to be a fluke. We don't play that game in football right now anymore, but I think that Eric Morris would probably also not be afraid of him. I think Eric Morris would understand the history of Bedlam. He grew up in the Big 12, but I think he would show up and say, yeah, there's no reason that we can't beat these guys. Who cares this is Oklahoma? Who cares? They're just 11 dudes. Go beat them. And I love that mentality. The offense specifically, and if you know me as a football fan, if you know me as a football guy, you know that I love the offensive side of the football. I will tell you every day, all day, how important defense is to football. You can't win without defense. I'll bring up Texas Tech again. When Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback there, how impressive was that offense? And that team never had a winning record because they couldn't stop anybody. They were bad defensively. I'll tell you that defense is important. But for me, I love watching offenses. I've always been an offensively minded person with regards to the game of football. And Oklahoma State offensively put up 500 yards in that game. 500 yards is a lot of yards now, and the game of football in 2026 is much more friendly to the offense. It's much more geared to the offense than it was then. And a couple more stats that I'm going to put up is that Josh Fields, the quarterback for that Oklahoma State team, had 357 yards passing. And when I typed that out, it didn't seem like a crazy high number because, again, I'm used to now modern football, which is a lot of throwing the football, a lot of aerial attack, a lot of dudes throwing for a lot of yards. That wasn't a ton of Oklahoma State's offense. Les Miles was a defensive-minded coach, and Mike Gundy was a really good offensive coordinator. But Les Miles was a defensive-minded coach. He wanted to play field position. He wanted to play time of possession. He wanted to establish running the football. He wanted to do all those things that defensive-minded coaches want to do to put themselves in the best position to win defensively. Really conventional style. We saw that when he was at LSU. We didn't throw the ball enough to gain 357 yards through the air routinely. At the time, 357 passing yards would be 550, 575 in modern college football. I mean, we're just slinging the ball around. The phrase that Rashawn Woods is still open, Rashawn's still open, he might still be open. If you go back, if you've watched any of that game, whether it was the entirety of the game like I did, whether it's highlights that you can find on the internet, you couldn't cover him. He got lost. He was the number one player on the team. You knew who the ball was going to, and nobody in that Oklahoma secondary could cover him. Rashawn beat everybody, had 12 catches, was over 200 yards receiving, one of the most dominant performances through the air that I'd seen, especially up to that point, but even now. 200 yards receiving is quite a feat, even in a pass-heavy league. It was a fun game to watch. I knew, because of that Bedlam game in 2001, the first game I ever watched, that I was going to be an Oklahoma State fan. I knew I didn't really have a choice. Grew up in an Oklahoma State house to two Oklahoma State parents. You know, my whole upbringing was Oklahoma State. I knew that. I already had orange in the closet. But I watched that game in 2001, and then I watched this one in 2002. Followed the team much more closely in 2002, watched a lot more of the football, even though it was hard. I mean, games weren't always televised in 2002, especially for a program like Oklahoma State that didn't have that national prestige, didn't get a lot of games on TV. So you listened to a lot more games on the radio and things like that, or you just waited for the nightly news or the newspaper. The next day, I was a big newspaper kid. There's a reason I work as a sports writer now, to really get the info on the game. But any chance that I got, I was watching Oklahoma State on TV. And this is one of those games that just got seared into my memory. And I said, hey, I get to go to school on Monday in Yukon, Oklahoma, around a bunch of OU fans right in the western part of Oklahoma City, and I get to gloat. I don't care if we never beat them again. We beat them last year. We beat them this year. I can talk some mess. I can defend myself for being an Oklahoma State fan on the playground on Monday morning, or when we come in and we're in the library to start the day Monday morning. I can do it, and best believe I did it. Right? I was never a super mouthy kid, but I had a leg to stand on, and I wanted people to know about it. Right? So it's one of those games that meant a lot to me back then. It still means a lot to me now because of what it did for the trajectory of the Oklahoma State program, and especially for that team in 2002, to propel them to the Houston Bowl, get them back into the postseason. Big time stuff for the program. And again, we don't play that game anymore, and I wish we would. I think we all as fans want to see Bedlam come back. And hopefully, you know, whether it's Eric Morris or whether it's in the future and it's somebody else, and I'm not predicting that Eric Morris is going to leave. I hope he's around Stillwater forever. I say that before he's ever coached a game here, but I'm a big Eric Morris guy, big believer in Eric Morris. That I want that game to come back, and I believe that we can get back to beating Oklahoma, especially after beating them in 2 of the last 3, to send the series out the right way. So it's always fun to be reminiscent, but we're going to come back to the present. You thought I was going to say back to the future. You thought. I saw you. But we're going to stay back in the present now, and we'll go back to the past again because we've got Orange Jams up next. We've got another really good new release and a throwback selection this week that really made me have to come to terms with my own age because it's another album from my childhood, just like we had Rob Zombie in the throwbacks last week with Sinister Urge. We've got one that's even a couple years older than that now, a year older than that actually, coming up in the throwbacks. So stick around for Orange Jams next on the Orange Suit Guy Show. Orange Jams here on the Orange Suit Guy Show, where I hopefully expand your mind, but not in a illicit sense, to the world of heavy music, rock and metal music, both in the current sphere and something from the past, albums that I've really loved back in the day, and stuff that's currently in my playlist. Last week we talked about a really good release from Alter Bridge that came out all the way back in January. We're a little bit more recent than that, but still an album that's a couple months old at this point. We're getting this one out of the tank as well, and then we'll get into some really new stuff from here on out. But Spotify Wrapped every year, I'll start it this way. Spotify Wrapped every year is one of my favorite things because I kind of go in spurts throughout the year of I listen to these two bands for a long time, then I listen to these two bands, then I listen to these two bands, and I've got bands that I'm always listening to that kind of just get sprinkled throughout the year when I'm between stuff that's really on my mind at the time. And one of those bands that always has stuck around because they've been doing this for over 20 years now. They're 8 albums into their career, and there's a reason that I know that. Ominous foreshadowing is ominous. Is a band called Shinedown. Shinedown is one of my all-time favorite bands. I've gotten to see them live multiple times. They always do a great show. I follow them on all their socials. If you want a microcosm of what my brain is and what my Spotify Wrapped this year should be, listen to last week's show, listen to this week's show. Alter Bridge and Shinedown. And that's it. I mean, if at the end of the year in 2026, when I go pull my Spotify Wrapped, if it's something other than Alter Bridge or Shinedown as my top listened artist of the year, then the second half of the year is going to be bananas because there's no reason it should be. It should be one of those two bands. And the record that we're talking about today, there's a reason I know it's the 8th studio record for Shinedown because it's Shinedown's new record called 8 coming out from Atlantic Records. And one of the cool things about 8 is Eric Bass, the bass player for Shinedown, produced this record. And you say, okay, cool. Yeah, he's a producer. Well, he's a bass player. He's a producer. He's an engineer. He's a piano player. Does a ton of other arrangement and stuff for the band. This is also the 3rd straight record that he has produced for Shinedown. The last 2 being Attention, Attention and Planet Zero. Both of those records much different than 8. Both of those records were concept records. They were telling a cohesive story throughout the length of the record. I liked Attention, Attention more than I liked Planet Zero, but both of those records have some incredible songs on them. Actually, Shinedown just came through Oklahoma City a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And if you go back and read through the set list that they played, I mean, the songs that they played from Planet Zero, the songs they played from Attention, Attention, incredible songs. And 8 has some of those too. I said Shinedown's been doing this for a long time. They understand how to make really, really good music. They understand what it takes to make a solid record. I don't want to say they've slowed down. They've kind of softened a little bit of their music over the last few years. I mean, they're 20 years older than they were when they started. Brent Smith is sober. I mean, when this band got started, it's open knowledge that he was on drugs. And, you know, he's been sober for many years now. He's been clean for many years now. And these guys have made music and worked together and toured together for 20 years. You're not the same person 20 years into your career. I say that like I've done anything for 20 years other than be alive. But it's something that, it's a bad example, but 20 years ago I was 13 years old. I'm certainly not the same person now as I was when I was 13 years old. But even though they put out more of kind of the slower, more introspective stuff now, they can still turn it up. And they can still go balls to the wall, what you expect from a Shinedown record. And there's both of those elements on this record. Right? This one was a rare case for me. Because I actually didn't really listen to the promotional singles before the record came out. They put out 6 singles to promote this record. That's a bonkers high number to me, and I heard 3 of them. And I will say, the 3 singles that I heard from the record I thought were really, really good. I didn't listen to the other ones until the record came out. The three that I listened to were songs called Searchlight, songs called 365, and um, oh, I wrote this down. Hold on, I have to look at my computer. Sorry, pulling back the curtain a little bit. It was a song called Safe and Sound. I thought it was. I just wanted to reconfirm that. And all of those really good songs in their own right, but if you listen to two of those three songs, they're really stripped down songs. 365 is a more laid back type of song, more introspective song. Searchlight is a ballad, it's an acoustic guitar ballad. Really good song. And then Safe and Sound comes back and turns it up. Safe and Sound was actually, it's one of my favorite songs on the record, and it was their show opener at their Oklahoma City tour stop. I think it's the opening song on most of their tour stops on this run. And it's weird. There's a couple of songs on this record, and I'm going to highlight both of them, but there's a couple songs on this record that openly are dropping F-bombs and things like that, and that's unusual for Shinedown, in my opinion. Shinedown's always kind of found ways to write around that, to not, be a band that has a lot of profanity in their stuff. They also try to stay away from it on stage as well, because it's an all-ages show. But it's not off-putting. I mean, obviously, I don't care if somebody uses profanity in their life. I certainly am not a saint in that regard. But it's one of those things that, like, when they use it, it makes sense. It makes sense in the context of the song. Safe and Sound is an aggressive song. It's designed to not sound, inviting. Safe and Sound's kind of a misnomer as a title. And listen, made no bones about it. I've channeled a lot of negativity over the last several months of my life, and when I listened to that song, it was another one of those ones where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. I understand where you're at in this song. I'm good. I get it. I had the same kind of reaction in Planet Zero to a song called Dead Don't Die that was actually written by their guitar player, by Zach, their guitar player, and thought it was a great song. Highlighting notable tracks. Kyle, you wrote a dumb format, but trying to put notable tracks in for a record this good is really tough. Just because there's a lot, and I try to hold it to three, no more than three. And I just said, I could say, 365, Searchlight, and Safe and Sound. And it's not that I wanted to include a song that wasn't a single just for the sake of having a song that wasn't a single. But there's times when an album cut, especially as an album guy the way that I am, there's times when an album cut is my favorite song off the record. And this album is one of those albums. There is a track halfway through this record that when you hear a song that just encapsulates where you're at in life and where you're at mentally and where you're at emotionally, there's times when you hear it and you get really fired up and you're happy that this song is saying what you can't, and that you're right where you want to be with this song, for lack of a better way of saying it. And then you hear certain songs that you relate to on that level and you get kind of concerned. You'll be like, oh man, like, I hear what he's saying in this song, but the problem is I hear what he's saying in this song. And for me, option 2 was true with the song Imposter. Imposter is my favorite song off this record, and so the three songs that I'm highlighting are Imposter, Safe and Sound, and 365. It's another one. Now, it's a rock song. It turns up a little bit. It kind of starts, it kind of builds. It's not, it's not a song like Bully or like Diamond Eyes or like Sound of Madness or something like that, that just is Enemies, that's just kind of immediately turn up to 60 and let's go. It's a build-up song, but it's really well done. I listened to it today while I was writing this part of the episode out because I love the song. I think it's a great song, and it's my favorite song on the record. I love that Brent Smith continues to be able to write good songs. These are four guys. These are four guys that have done this together. There has not been a lineup change in Shinedown since Leave a Whisper came out back in 2003. And they're 23 years in and still continuing to do this at the highest possible level. I don't understand how that even happens, but I love that they do, and I want them to continue to put music out all the time, because the more music that they put out, the more music that I have to listen to, and the more music that I have to talk about, and I'm probably going to keep loving it. So, Shinedown 8 is the new release of the week. Going into the throwback of the week, oh, wow. I had to look at this and realize that this record is 26 years old. And I mentioned that I turned 33 this week now, or I guess this week by the time you're seeing it, next week by the time I'm recording it. And I called my brother earlier today because he's been helping get some of these video pieces that you're seeing for me. And I said, hey, I have a throwback album this week, and I need some video clips. He said, okay, what do you got? I said, well, I don't need to give you a list of songs for you to pull, because you know this record like the back of your hand, the same way that I do. He said, okay, what are you thinking? And I said, well, it's and then I said the name of the record, and there was silence, and he said, that is a throwback record now, isn't it? And I said, yep, yes, in fact it is. And he said, okay, I'll get on it. And so this is an album that was a huge part of my life. I was raised up on rock music and metal music, but it was all stuff from the 70s and from the 80s. It was all stuff that came before me, stuff that my parents listened to, 70s, 80s, 90s music. And it wasn't even just rock and metal. Like, we got into pop music. We got into some other stuff like that, too. I have a wide variety of things that interest me in the musical world. This is just my home, which is the rock and metal world. This record comes from a genre called nu metal. That was nu metal, for as cringy as it can be, for as laughably bad as some of it is, and as much of a product of its time as it is, I will always have a special place in my heart for it. I love it, and the biggest reason that I love it is this band. The throwback record of the week is Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, which came out in 2000. This record is 26 years old now, and that only doesn't compute with me, because I'm perfectly fine with being in my 30s. I'm perfectly fine with getting a little bit older. It doesn't bother me, right? I don't think about it. I just kind of live my life. And I used to think about it a lot more, and it wasn't conducive, right? So I don't really, it's not a thought that I have of, oh man, like, I don't know as much about modern pop culture because I'm kind of checked out to it, because I've kind of moved on from it. I don't care. This one hit me because when I listened to Hybrid Theory as a record, I feel like I'm that angsty, this album came out when I was 7, but, by the time I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I'm picking up the copy of this CD that I had bought, and I'm listening to this CD, and I had already heard, Crawling on the radio, or I'd heard In the End on the radio, or I'd heard One Step Closer on the radio, and it was one of those that was just like, this is an album that's going to shape me. I can tell you, without even attempting to look at the record, the track list from start to finish from memory with no issue, no hesitation. I can recite to you every lyric on this record, because this was the record to me growing up. And I'm actually one of those Linkin Park fans who has the opinion that I think Meteora, their second record, was actually a little bit better than Hybrid Theory was. I get crucified for that opinion sometimes. But Meteora doesn't happen if Hybrid Theory doesn't happen. Hybrid Theory is a phenomenal record, an A-plus record from top to bottom, and I didn't cover it sooner because I had never thought of it as a retro record. I'd never thought of it as a throwback record because of where my brain goes when I listen to it. And it's right back to, a time before the iPhone, a time before social media. Speaking of social media, before me or my brother ever had Facebook accounts. Before we ever had Facebook accounts or anything like that, we had accounts on this little social media site called LPN, which was Linkin Park Network. And all we did was talk to other Linkin Park fans. I don't still talk to anybody from that site. That was a long time ago, but like every day I'd get home from school and I would check my LPN account and see, what my friends from all over the world who were brought together by the music of Linkin Park were up to. It was everywhere. It was a huge part of my life, and I'm finally getting the chance to talk about it on this show because I've finally begrudgingly accepted that it is, in fact, a throwback record. And I've already mentioned the three singles to you. Three out of the four singles, excuse me. Paper Cut was the other single as an album opener. Paper Cut is awesome. And so I decided to make an executive decision with this record. And that is, I'm not going to highlight any tracks that were singles for notable tracks. You know those songs. If you listen to anything from that time period, or you've listened to any Linkin Park at all, you know about In the End. You know about Crawling. You know about One Step Closer. You probably know about Paper Cut. Hopefully you do. So I went a different way. And I've actually kind of not bent the rules, because I said I just am going to stick to 3 songs for Shinedown, and I've technically got 4 for Hybrid Theory. But the caveat is that 2 of these songs are on the proper record. 2 of these songs never made it on the proper record, and they're only on the deluxe edition of the record, and I will never understand why. One of the coolest things about, and this is a hypothesis that I have for why those 2 songs weren't included, even though they could have made it work if they wanted to. One of the cool things that you don't get in streaming now, if you listen to this record on Spotify or on Apple Music or anything like that, there's no seamless listening on it. In the CD version of it, there are transitions. There are cohesive transitions where some of them are fast, some of them take a while, but they go from one song into the other. Every song introduces the next song. There's no blank space in the record. It just kind of feels like you're listening to one really, really long song that just takes a bunch of twists and turns along the way. If you listen to it on streaming now, there's still a second of silence between all of them. It takes a little bit away from the listening experience, but it's not going to ruin it for you or anything like that. It was just a really cool thing that I noticed as a kid listening to the record that other records didn't do, was find a way to sew all of these tracks together, and I'm a big fan of that. The 2 tracks that I have selected as standout tracks that weren't singles are a song called A Place for My Head and a song called Pushes Me Away. Pushes Me Away is the closing track on the traditional record. A Place for My Head is track number 9. And I chose those 2 because they're unique songs. When I finally got the chance to see Linkin Park live in either 2008 or 2009, I want to say either the very end of 2008 or very beginning of 2009, I think they played both of these songs in that set list. They played for sure one or the other, but I think they played both. They both were on the Live in Texas DVD that came out a couple of years after Hybrid Theory and Meteora came out. A Place for My Head starts with a really unique guitar riff. Not a hard guitar riff. A guitar riff you could probably learn in an hour, if that. Especially on a detuned guitar, the way that Linkin Park played it. Pushes Me Away is just a really angsty song, but it's a product of its time that I really enjoyed. And because I'm specifically highlighting songs that weren't singles, I mean, I could have gone with Runaway, I could have gone with Points of Authority, I could have gone with You, By Myself, Forgotten. I mean, there's so many good songs on this record, but decided to go with A Place for My Head and with Pushes Me Away. And if you have the deluxe edition, then you'll know the 2 songs that I'm talking about next. 2 songs that I do remember they played when I saw them live in Oklahoma City in either 2008 or 2009. And that was actually on the Minutes to Midnight tour for their 3rd record, which is why I know the timeline of it. There's 2 songs on that deluxe edition. One is called My December, one is called High Voltage. They are tonally incredibly different songs. My December is a piano ballad. And there's not, if you know the difference between Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda as vocalists, it's not that Mike has no part in My December, but his part is diminished in My December. It's a Chester Bennington song that I believe, I should have confirmed this with my brother, who was an even bigger Linkin Park fan than I was, and that sang something. I believe that song was written, and High Voltage, the other song, may have been written before Linkin Park was technically called Linkin Park, because Hybrid Theory was the original band name for them. Chester Bennington was also part of a band called Grey Days before Linkin Park existed, so there's a chance that those songs even date back to that. I don't remember the exact chronology of it, but these were deluxe edition songs that they're gems they're gems that anybody should listen to. They're available on streaming platforms. I listen to those two songs, in all honesty, probably more now than I listen to the rest of the record, because they weren't on the rest of the record. And I listened to High Voltage this morning again when I was writing this part of the episode, because it's what I call a very intelligent rap song. Mike Shinoda definitely shows off some impressive vocabulary, multi-syllabic words in High Voltage, and they're both enjoyable songs for very different reasons. But those are the four places, especially if you find the deluxe edition. And like I said, it's available on Spotify. I listen to it all the time. Check out those deluxe edition songs. Check out My December. Check out High Voltage. Obviously, listen to the whole of the album, but A Place for My Head and Pushes Me Away are the two non-single tracks that I've selected. Rest in peace, Chester Bennington. It's still not ever been the same since you've been gone in the rock and metal world. Still doesn't feel real that that's the case to me, but this record is incredible. And if you haven't listened to Hybrid Theory in a while, because you've probably listened to it once, if you haven't listened to it in a while, pick it up, give it a spin, and get back into Linkin Park, because they're phenomenal. So we're going to go into our final segment of the show, and I have to admit, when we start the next segment of the show, that I said something really wrong last week, and I said it multiple times, and I didn't catch it until we went back to edit it, or I would have fixed it in the moment. But we're going to talk about a really cool movie in Horror Corner that ties into last week's episode. That might be enough of a spoiler for you to figure it out. But stick around. Horror Corner is next on the Orange Suit Guy Show. You know what that sound means. It's time for Horror Corner on the Orange Suit Guy Show. And again, I have to start with admitting that I was wrong. And it wasn't wrong because I didn't know what I was talking about. It's just because I said the wrong thing. And I said it multiple times, and the reason was I had the title track to the movie that I was talking about stuck in my head, and it was the wrong movie. It was the wrong title track. I said last week in the Horror Corner that the sequel to Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses was a movie called The Lords of Salem. Incorrect. There are several of the same cast members in The Lords of Salem. Lords of Salem is not a bad movie, but it's not related to the Firefly family at all. The sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses is the movie that we're going to be talking about today, because I wanted to get that detail right, and so I figured, you know what, I don't usually do series in back-to-back weeks, but since I have to bring this up because I was wrong about it, let's just do it. Let's do 2005's The Devil's Rejects, the actual sequel. Single was last segment, Kyle. The actual sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses from Lionsgate Entertainment, Devil's Rejects, again starring Bill Moseley, Sid Haig, Sherry Moon Zombie. A change in the cast if you watch it from movie 1 to movie 2 with the character of Mother Firefly. And I also said something that I had to fact check on. I said in the beginning of that House of a Thousand Corpses review that Sid Haig's character, Captain Spaulding, is not related to the Firefly family. Incorrect. If you listen to the dialogue in The Devil's Rejects the way that I did this week, and if you go and read up on it a little bit, baby Firefly is actually the daughter of Captain Spaulding. Captain Spaulding is one of two men that Mama Firefly had children with, the other one being Earl, the professor in House of a Thousand Corpses. He had Rufus and she had Rufus and Tiny with Earl, and she had Baby with Captain Spaulding. Of course, all of those names are aliases, and all of those people have their own individual names. It's actually Otis, who is the main villain, really, in most of these movies, but he's not technically blood related to the family. He's grafted in. Captain Spaulding's actually the one who found him as a hitchhiker and brought him to the family. The family took him in, made him part of their own crew, and he's just as sadistic as the rest of them. And so Otis Firefly is Otis B. Driftwood is Otis Firefly from then on out. So that ties in how Spaulding is related to the family. all of the housekeeping is now done. Everything that I said wrong last week, I have made amends for. I have fixed it because I fix things. It's what I do. So, getting into this movie from Lionsgate Entertainment, if I hadn't said that yet, this movie is shot much more like a Western. If you know Rob Zombie's tendencies, he loves Westerns just as much as he loves classic horror cinema. House of Thousand Corpses, it takes place in Rugsville. It takes place at the house. It's really dark. It's really supposed to be just spooky and gritty with a lot of callbacks to classic horror cinema. And it really portrays the Firefly family as these monsters. I mean, if you've ever seen something like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that has some Western bits to it too. But if you're inside the house, it's a whole other hellscape in the house, and that's what House of Thousand Corpses aims to do. Devil's Rejects, the family's on the run. Rufus has been killed. Probably Earl has been killed. That's never established definitively. But the movie opens with the house being raided by the FBI, by the SWAT team. Everything 7 months later after the events of House, everything is crashing down on the family. They're caught. They're connected to 75 deaths. They're absolutely caught. And it's a shootout. Rufus is shot and killed. Mama Firefly, like I said, who was a different a different actress, Leslie Easterbrook, takes the role of Mother Firefly in this movie. It was Karen Black in the first movie. If you know Leslie Easterbrook, she was in Laverne and Shirley. She was in the Police Academy movies. And now randomly she's in Devil's Rejects. So a weird left turn in her career. She, in character, Leslie does not. Mama Firefly decides she's going to take herself out. She goes to shoot herself during the shootout. Once she realizes that she's going to be caught, she lets Otis and Baby escape. Sid Haig has already, Captain Spaulding has already escaped. They go meet up with him. She can't kill herself. The bullet's out of gun. The gun is out of bullets. Have I told you I'm tired? Have I mentioned that yet in this episode? But the gun is out of bullets. She's taken into police custody. And really, that's what kind of, I think, sets this whole thing off. Because Otis and Baby and Spaulding are all running. And you know that these people are sadistic. You know that now they're sadistic and they have to try to survive. They kidnap a bluegrass band. They hold them hostage, end up killing them in some brutal ways. I mean, there's not as many kills in Devil's Rejects, but the kills that there are really, they go for as much, I don't want to say shock value, but they go for as much impact as possible. And you just see a much different side of the sadism of the Firefly family and of Captain Spaulding, because they're no longer in their element. They have this added will to just survive and escape captivity. And this movie almost does the impossible for me. It almost makes me feel sympathy for them, because Wydell, the name of the sheriff in this movie, it's already established, right, that he's kind of a corrupt sheriff. He's not an upstanding citizen either. He hires some mercenaries to try to find the family. He gets Mama Firefly in the interrogation room to admit that she's the one who shot and killed his brother in the first movie. I can tell you exactly what scene it is in the movie because it's brutal in house. And he kills her. He snaps, he kills her. He has a dream and believes that he's being told to avenge his brother's death, and he snaps and he kills this woman. And when Otis and Baby and Spaulding are all caught by the mercenaries and caught by Wydell, the sheriff, instead of taking them to the police station to question them, to let justice run its course, he takes them back to the house. Takes them back to the Firefly family house puts them in chairs, and begins to torture them and say that they are going to be given the same treatment that they gave their victims, and he's going to enjoy every second of it. And their hands are nailed to chairs. They're beaten. They both have pictures of victims stapled to them and things like that. Spaulding has this little moment of humanity where he tries to actually take the blame for some of Baby's kills, so that he will be punished instead of she being punished. It doesn't work. It's a whole thing where you're looking at this family and you're saying, Otis, excuse my language, Otis rapes a woman in Devil's Rejects as part of this whole bluegrass band fiasco, right? He cuts a man's face off in this movie. He claims to be the literal devil incarnate and beats a man to death. Like, Otis is a psychopath. You've seen everything that Baby Firefly has done. Captain Spaulding assaults a woman to steal her car, tells her child son, hey, find a reason you don't like clowns or I'm going to come back and kill your entire family. These are not upstanding people. These are scum of the earth people. These are monsters. And you're sitting there watching him, like, being tortured in this house, and if you're wired anything like me, it's just like, man, like, this shouldn't be how they're getting treated right now. Like, yeah, they did all these crazy things, but if you're going to catch them, bring them to justice. Why are we nailing their hands to chairs? It for me, it was almost kind of that weird, like, trying to draw some sympathy for the monster. And they're in the house. Wydell sets the house on fire. He lets Baby go because he's going to take her outside, let her run around, and hunt her for sport. That's something that he says he's going to do. He's going to treat Baby like she is a prey animal, and he is going to be a predator, and he's going to hunt her for sport, and he's going to let Spaulding and Otis be burned to death in this house as he burns the Firefly family house to the ground. And it would have worked, except for the last member of the Firefly family that we haven't mentioned yet, Matthew McGrory's final appearance in a movie before his death, Tiny Firefly, the deformed sibling of Baby, half-sibling of Baby, deformed son of Mama Firefly because of Earl's actions when he was a kid, comes out, snaps Wydell's neck, and frees Otis and Spaulding, and then turns around and locks himself in the house and goes down with the house. And that's how Tiny meets his end, because it's all that he knows. He has no use being out there with the others. All he knows is the house. The only place he wants to be is the house, and goes and accepts that that's his fate. And it's actually it's almost an emotional sequence, because you almost feel like Tiny doesn't know any better. Tiny is deformed. He's been a victim of abuse. Like, he doesn't really understand the same way that the others do. And so Tiny's death is almost kind of an emotional moment. And then the ending sequence to the movie is actually really well done. I really like the ending sequence, because the only way that you can end the story of this family is with them being dead. Because if they're not dead, they're going to find a way to keep going and keep doing what they do. You have to make sure they're dead. Now Mama's dead, Earl's dead, Rufus is dead, Tiny's dead. I assume Dr. Satan is dead underneath in the catacombs. It's never really addressed, but I assume he's gone. There's 3 left, with Spaulding and with Otis and with Baby. And, they've got their friends, their associates. They've got Charlie and things like that out there that are introduced in this movie. But they find a car, they've got guns, they're beaten, they're bloodied, and they're on the highway, they're going away, and they find a police blockade. The police have cut them off. It's the end of the road for the Fireflies, and in one final act of defiance, they don't surrender. They wield their guns, hit the gas pedal, take off at the barricade, open fire, let the police open fire on them. They all eat several bullets during this sequence. The car careens off the road, goes down a ravine in Texas there, and they land at the bottom of the hill. Everybody's dead. That's the end of it. That's the end of it. We're not talking about Three from Hell. Rob Zombie decided several years later that he wanted to have retcon the ending and have them survive it and get a third movie out of it right before Sid Haig died. Oh, excuse me. Right before Sid Haig died. Sid Haig was only cleared for 2 days of filming after a surgery for Three from Hell, and they gave him one scene, basically, and it was a whole fiasco. Anyway, we're not talking about Three from Hell. Don't ask me about it. It didn't happen. It doesn't exist, right? It can exist in an alternate universe. It doesn't exist in reality. This is the end of the Firefly story, and it's the only appropriate ending for that family. I really like both of these movies. I really like House of a Thousand Corpses. I really like Devil's Rejects. They're incredibly different movies stylistically, the story that they're telling, even though it's within the same family and they're directly related to each other. I can see you liking House and not liking Rejects. I can see you liking Rejects and not liking House. Like I said, they're incredibly different from each other. But two really well done movies, in my opinion, for what they were. Again, we're not going to talk about Three from Hell. This is the last time I'm going to mention it on this show. But two really good movies to get the story that Rob Zombie wrote about this family in. The Devil's Rejects as a song, he also wrote, just like he wrote a title track for House of a Thousand Corpses, just like he wrote a title track for Lords of Salem, which was the song that was in my head last week when I was thinking about it. It's not as good, but it's there. It's fine. It has no relevance. I'm happy that I know that both of these movies exist. I'm happy that I've seen both of them. As a horror movie lover, as a horror movie junkie, in my opinion, they're worth the watch. They're worth the time. So, something else that I hope has been worth the time is this show, because that's where we're going to leave this episode of Orange Suit Guy Show. I hope that you've got an appreciation for older Oklahoma State football now. I hope you have an appreciation for Western-style dark comedy, horror movies, weird Rob Zombie films. That's just Rob Zombie's genre, weird with stuff pulled from everywhere movies. I hope you remember that Hybrid Theory from Linkin Park is a great record, and if you haven't listened to 8 from Shinedown, go listen to it. It's a phenomenal movie, phenomenal record. I think I said Hybrid Theory was a movie too. It's not. It's a record. Go listen to both of them. I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed, and I'm going to sleep. But I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to know that this truth still stands evident. Everything is better in an orange suit. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.